Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me, as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How is everybody tonight?
Tonight's episode is going to be an interesting one. On tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about Bigfoot, and we've done several shows on Bigfoot in the past, and on those shows, we have talked about the Texas Bigfoot and how that Bigfoot is more aggressive than other areas' Bigfoots. So tonight's episode is going to be focusing on an article that talks about a Bigfoot attack that took place in Texas. So tonight's article comes from mysteriousuniverse.org, and the headline is Strange Attacks from Log-Throwing Bigfoot at Sam Houston National Forest in Texas. It was written by Britt Swancer, and it was published March 24th, 2021. For all of their massive size, the mysterious creatures known as Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and numerous other regional names have mostly been traditionally considered to be gentle giants. They are typically shy, avoid human beings, and are rarely reported as doing anything remotely aggressive or menacing. Only frightening in appearance and the sheer shock factor they produce when an unsuspecting witness stumbles across them. However, for all of their benign reputation, the literature of Bigfoot reports is not without its more sinister and sometimes downright terrifying reports. Bigfoot have been known to display aggressive bluffing behaviors, such as hooting, barking, wood knocking, in which they bang objects against trees with tremendous force to produce startlingly loud sounds, throwing objects such as rocks or logs, and even straight out charging and attacking, of which there are very occasional reports. One area that seems to have its share of apparently very grumpy Bigfoot is a national park in the U.S. state of Texas, where there have been a good number of reports from one national forest that paint the giant creatures as less than peaceful and very prone to throwing large, heavy things. One of 4 national parks in Texas, the Sam Houston National Forest, is sprawled out over 163,037 acres between Huntsville, Conroe, Cleveland, and Richards, Texas, just about 50 miles from the metropolis of Houston. It is a popular place for hiking, camping, fishing, and boating at Lake Conroe and Lake Livingston, and hunting. The area is also rich in archaeological sites and wildlife, including endangered species such as the bald eagle and the red-cocketed woodpecker. Another animal that allegedly calls this place home is the Bigfoot. Sighting reports are common at Sam Houston National Forest, with sometimes over 40 a year coming in from all over the park, as well as reports of hearing eerie howling or wailing from the dark wilderness. There is so much Bigfoot activity here that some areas even post warning signs about the purported beasts, just in case. It is probably a good idea because the Bigfoot in this particular national park have a reputation for being uncommonly aggressive. The aforementioned wood knocking is very common in the park, and although it is unknown why exactly these creatures might do this, in cryptozoology it has traditionally been seen as a way of communications, as well as a bluffing or threat display. However, judging by some reports, one is lucky if this is the extent of their frightening encounter. In 2014, Bigfoot researcher and host of the Sasquatch Chronicles podcast, Wes Germer, went on an excursion here with guide Bob Garrett and his crew into an area of the park called Piney Woods, which is particularly known for its intense Bigfoot activity. It was not a particularly eventful expedition until one evening when they were sitting around quietly in their camp. Without warning, they were assailed by a cacophony of crashing brush out of the darkness. At first, Germer thought it was one of the crew messing around in the forest, but he soon realized that this was something else altogether. He says the sounds were from something far larger and more powerful than a human being, and that shortly after it all started, something very big and fast charged the camp. Germer would recount of this. My heart was just pounding in my throat. We hear this thing crash through the brush. And then we hear this thing start crashing. Just crash, 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 crash. And you can hear it walking, and you can hear it breaking branches as it's going. This thing moved so fast, it probably covered 100 to 150 yards like nothing. And I'm going to stop right here for a second and remind you of a story that I told on I believe it was the first Bigfoot episode we did, of my Bigfoot encounter that I had here at my house. As everybody knows, I live up in the mountains of Virginia, and I had a Sasquatch sighting here at my place, on my property. And I saw it up by the barn. It was about anywhere from 30 to 50 yards away. And I took off running towards it. And when I took off running towards it, it turned and ran away towards my back field. Well, about 10 yards, maybe 15 yards away from the barn is a fence. And you have a field that is a little over 100 yards, in between 100 and 125 yards long, and then another fence at the back of that field that leads off into the woods. So it covered the distance from the barn to the back fence that leads off into the woods by the time I reached the barn, running at full speed. And when I got up to that area, I saw it jumping across the back fence. So I can definitely back up the fact that these things can move that quickly and cover that kind of distance. Now back to the article. The mystery creature then allegedly bolted back into the trees. The noise then abruptly stopping, and the woods still and silent again. But this was not the end of the scary ordeal. Germer claims that he and Garrett picked up flashlights to go investigate, which was perhaps not the best of ideas. They estimated that the beast was still there, perhaps 30 or 40 feet off, beyond the tree line of the campsite, and watching them. Garrett, who was armed with a rifle, claimed that he caught a glimpse of something very big lurking out there. But Germer didn't see it, merely sensing that it was looming there in the gloom. They crept towards what they believed to be the location of the creature. But whatever it was does not seem to have appreciated this, as the two men heard a sound like the beating of helicopter blades. Germer says of what happened next. And I knew what it was. It was a log coming, and it was a big log, and you could hear it being thrown. And I ducked down because I thought for sure it was going to hit one of us in the head. But it hit a tree right in front of us, and I just couldn't believe that was happening. I knew what just threw that log at us. I knew what just paced us in. Germer claims that this wasn't even his first experience with a log-throwing Bigfoot in the park. He says that on a previous expedition to the same spot, a log had come sailing from the woods to smash into a spot where his girlfriend had just been sitting just moments before. And on another occasion, he had cowered in his truck as it was bombarded by rocks, sticks, and logs by the angry creatures. When they had finally left, he returned to his campsite to find it totally destroyed, as if a very large animal had ransacked it. That night, the aggressive displays would continue, of which he would say, "We could hear them run back and forth, and the tree limbs and broken trees flew into camp, non-stop." They also heard noises that sounded like a monkey trying to be an owl, or as Germer describes it, a frickin' werewolf. This was also in the same general vicinity as the other incidents, so whatever is there obviously does not seem to like company. Germer's is not the only such frightening report from the area. In 1965, a man named Mike Christian was hiking along the popular Lone Star Trail, and at some point was overcome with the feeling that he was being followed. The signs were subtle, a snap of a broken twig, or rustle from the brush and trees, something that he would have written off as a deer if it hadn't seemed to be always behind him, no matter how far he walked. He then was afraid that perhaps it was a person with bad intentions. He moved along. coming to an area that was very thick with trees and brush. And this was where he said he heard a deep guttural growl, which was enough to send him hurrying the other direction. As he did this, he claimed that there was a loud crack, after which a massive tree branch came crashing down right behind him, where he had just been seconds before with incredible force. This was when Christian realized that he was in grave danger. He began screaming and shouting in an effort to scare off whatever was behind him, running as fast as he could towards a meadow up ahead. As he reached the meadow, he says he came face to face with an enormous 8-foot-tall, hair-covered beast, which stood there with its chest puffed out right in Christian's path. Before the terrified man could even come screeching to a halt, the Bigfoot allegedly leaned forward and issued a blood-curdling roar that caused Christian to pass out from fright. He claims that when he awoke, he was miles from where he last remembered being, soaking wet and covered with cuts and bruises. He could not recall how he had gotten to that spot, later speculating that the creature had brought him there for reasons unknown. The Bigfoot Field Research Organization, or the BFRO, has several similarly harrowing cases from the region. In the summer of 2009, a witness by the name of Stan Williams was on assignment as a photographer for Texas Highways magazine and the Texas State Travel Guide to photograph the Sam Houston National Forest. In the late afternoon, he was west of Cold Spring, hiking out with his camera looking for shots. He claims he came to a clearing about a mile to 2 miles into the forest, where he waited for a few minutes in the hopes of getting a shot of some wildlife. As he sat there waiting, he apparently heard some crashing noises from behind the tree line, and a strange sequence of events would play out. The witness says, "After a few minutes, there was a loud crashing noise on the other side of the clearing that startled me, as deer make almost no noise. Before I could react, a small juvenile black bear came out of the trees, stopped in the clearing edge, and put its nose up in the air sniffing. It then abruptly turned around and ran back into the woods. I started to go after it for a photo, but thought better of it as its mother would undoubtedly be nearby. I decided to go back the way I had come to give them space. I had barely turned when I saw a huge dark humanoid shape, about 10 to 12 feet away, through some very thick Yalpin brush. I'm 6'3", and I was looking up at a 20 to 30 degree angle to its head and huge shoulders. Texas bears don't get anywhere close to this size, more like an Alaskan Kodiak bear in size. I froze. All of a sudden, its hand moved to a 2 to 3 inch diameter tree trunk, about 15 feet long, came flying toward me. I ran like a werewolf was after me, and it might have been. I was back at the car in just a few minutes, clothes torn and bleeding from cat's claws and briars, trying to stop me. I jumped in the car and I peeled out, not stopping till I reached Cold Spring. The witness would only later process what had happened and come to the conclusion that he had had a very close and dangerous encounter with a Sasquatch. Unfortunately, he was not able to get a picture of it. It might seem odd that this professional photographer, specifically waiting there in the clearing for wildlife to appear, wouldn't have been able to get a picture of the creature. But one of the BFRO researchers who followed up on the case has said of this, "This is a classic example why we get no close photos and few distant blob squatch photos. Here you have a trained professional photographer with professional equipment in a wooded environment. Presented with a potentially life-threatening situation, he was stricken with fear, fearing that he might be attacked by something so close to him. There was no thought to raise the camera to get a money shot. We spoke about that. He kicks himself to this day about not raising his camera. He was all about getting the heck out of there. He reacted like virtually anyone would, especially if they had no idea what they were encountering or what to expect from it. That's what happens when someone is in self-preservation mode, even a professional photographer. Those who wonder aloud why we have no good close-range photos need only imagine his exact scenario and honestly consider what you would do. Considering there are only a handful of reports of aggressive Bigfoot attacks, this seems to be an awful lot for one particular area. Why should this be? Is it that these creatures are particularly territorial and fierce in this region? If so, why? Why would these supposedly benevolent creatures be so amped up and wired for aggressiveness here? Or is it perhaps just tall tales and nerves? It is hard to say. But one thing that can be said is that the Sam Houston National Forest is certainly a hot spot for Bigfoot, and definitely has its share of particularly frightening accounts. Maybe the old adage is true, don't mess with Texas. And that is the end of this article. Now, I think the overarching and the main question that we should be asking at this point is why? Why are the Bigfoot in Texas so much more aggressive than the Bigfoot anywhere else? What could possibly be causing that? So the way I think I'll handle this is we're going to go over several different possibilities, different theories that I have that could be causing the Texas Bigfoot to be more aggressive. The first that I would have is that it is Texas. There's a lot of predators in that area. In Texas, there are a whole lot of things that can hurt you. You've got multiple types of venomous snake. You've got all kinds of different really, really nasty insects. I know when I was there, I lived in Texas for about 4 years. We were at Kelly Air Force Base, right outside of San Antonio. And there were multiple different kinds of insects that were way worse than anywhere else I'd ever been. The ants in Texas are large and their bites are horrible. I mean, they hurt like hell. Now, I've been bitten by ants in many different states and many different countries, but the ones in Texas were pretty severe. You also have scorpions in Texas. You have killer bees now that have made their way up from Mexico. You also have multiple different kinds of larger predators. You have mountain lions, you have bears, you have things like that. So one answer to this could be that the Bigfoot need to be more aggressive because there are a lot more things in Texas that can put a hurting on them than there are in other places. Now think about the fact that a lot of these venomous snakes can absolutely kill a human being easily. Certain types of scorpions can kill a human being easily. And even the ants there, if enough of them bite you, could kill you. So if all these things are capable of killing a human being, what could they do to a Sasquatch? Now, myself, I happen to think that Bigfoot is a Gigantopithecus. That's what I think that Bigfoot actually is. For those that don't know what that is, Gigantopithecus was an offshoot of early human. It's not Homo sapiens like us. It's in the human family, so to speak, but it is a completely different line than we are. So it is like us, but it is not us. Much larger, much stronger. So if that is what Sasquatch is, then you have to think that if something can kill us, then it's either going to also kill Bigfoot, or at the very least, it's going to put one hell of a hurting on him. So if that is the case, and you have more predators in the area, that's going to lead to a rise in aggression from the Sasquatch in order to keep itself safe. Because one thing I can tell you from living in the wilderness and spending a lot of time in the wilderness in my life, aggressiveness is your friend in a survival situation. Now, you don't want to be reckless and you don't want to be stupid. But what I mean by that is one thing you do when you travel through the woods, especially in an area that has dangerous bears, but really an area that has any bears, is you will clap your hands, you will sing aloud, you'll yell out, hey bear, every once in a while. The reason you do that is because you do not want to walk up on a bear and surprise one, because that doesn't end well. You want to let the bear know you're coming so that they can avoid you. Because in most cases, bears don't want anything to do with you. It's not like they're looking for you to kill you and eat you. They don't want nothing to do with you. But the problem is, most times when you walk right up on one and scare it, and especially if it's got its cubs with it, it's going to react and it's going to attack you. Now, when I say they don't usually want nothing to do with you, I'm speaking of brown bears and black bears also. Black bears can kill you and eat you, but they usually don't. Grizzlies are a whole different animal. A grizzly bear is much worse than a brown bear or a black bear. A black bear is worse than a brown bear. Grizzly bear is the worst bear that we have in the area. So a grizzly bear, you are on the menu for a grizzly bear. But one thing you can do if you're in that situation is you want to make yourself look as large as humanly possible. Okay, you want to spread your arms out real wide. You want to hoop and holler, be very loud, very noisy, and very aggressive. You don't want to run at the bear because it'll kill you. But you want to stand your ground and you want to hoop and holler and wave your arms and be really big and scary sounding. This makes the bear think that you're a lot bigger than you actually are, and most times he'll just go away. Doesn't always work with grizzlies because, like I said, completely different beast. But with most bears, that'll scare them off. Now, there are multiple different bear deterrents, so to speak. Bear spray is a very popular one. I'm not a big fan of bear spray for the simple reason that I'm not a big fan of pepper spray, because it's dependent on there not being a lot of wind on the day that you're using it. Because if you spray bear spray or pepper spray into the wind that's blowing at you, you're going to end up wearing it too. Now, bear spray comes out a lot faster and harder. It's more pressurized. So most likely you're going to still hit the bear with it, but you're also going to get some on yourself. And if you do that, you're going to incapacitate yourself as well, and you might still get eaten. What I suggest is an air horn. An air horn is something that's easy to carry with you. It's not very heavy, and it produces a very, very loud and unnatural sound. A bear does not know what the hell an air horn is. It's not used to hearing that sound, so when it hears something that loud, most times it's going to take off running. Now, that being said, after you do that, get the hell out of the area, because once the bear gets used to that sound and realizes that it's not going to hurt him, then it's not going to bother him anymore. But anyway, I told you all that stuff basically to get to the point that aggressiveness is a good idea when you're trying to deal with predators. If you make yourself seem a lot bigger and badder than you are, they're going to leave you alone most times. So that's one theory of what it could be. Another theory of what it could be is shrinking habitat. As human beings build more and more housing, stores, stupid strip malls we don't need, that kind of stuff. As we do more and more of that, we're eating up more and more wooded areas, more and more wilderness areas. And what you're left with is very small areas of habitat. Now, this is in a park that's fairly large, but the surrounding areas, I guarantee you, have been built up. So what happens is when you have a smaller habitat than you used to have, then you have more animals in a smaller area competing for finite resources. And you're going to end up with more aggressive behavior in order to secure those resources. It happens in the animal kingdom. It happens in human beings as well. As something is more rare, it's worth more, and people end up fighting wars over stuff like that. So that's another theory of what it could have been. So what I want to do now is I want to throw over to Old Boy and to get his opinion on all this and anything else that he would like to talk about. So Old Boy, go ahead, brother.
Thank you, brother. I've heard about this before, about the Texas Bigfoot. They're more aggressive. They've actually attacked and actually supposedly killed people because they also think they are either mutated or inbred or they're deformed in some way or they're just aggressive. I've seen it on I think it was Monster Hunter. I watched it about the Texas Bigfoot. And I've heard about them, and they're very aggressive. Actually, they have people going around. They're trying to get bounties to kill them because they're not like the other Bigfoots up in California and Canada and Washington and Pennsylvania. They're a lot more aggressive. Like the Bog Creek, what was that? Bog Creek or whatever it's like in Louisiana or something. They made a movie about that. It's about a thing that was attacking people, and they think that might be what it is, the Boggy Creek, and they made another one too. And it was in Louisiana, and I think by Texas, and they're saying in the swamps there, they're having an issue with these things attacking people. So I've heard this already, so I kind of believe it. I don't know if it's what I originally said, but that's what I've heard. Sorry guys, I've heard about this before. And yeah, I've been to Texas too, and they have a lot of bigger, like they said, everything's bigger in Texas. You go to the store, their truck stops are so huge. It's like being in a super Walmart. They have beef jerky aisles everywhere. So he's pretty much their animals, like the mosquitoes and stuff are there are huge. There's all kinds of stuff there. It's bigger than Texas. And it's true. They have that 96-ounce steak or whatever it is. I think they're going to change it to 100 and something because too many people are eating it now. And the Big Texan, that's a restaurant, I think, in Amarillo. And I've been there before when I was younger. But it exists. And they have the 96-ounce steak. And you have to eat it in an hour and you get your dinner for free and you get money or something. But I guess too many people are eating it. But he's right. It's always bigger in Texas. But these things are supposed to be like 8 feet, 8.5, 9 feet tall, and they attack you. And for some reason, they're aggressive to humans. And the Boggy Creek, if you guys ever seen it, was a documentary about a real creature around that area, Texas, Louisiana, and the swamps. And Arkansas, I think, too. There's like a big swamp there, goes throughout both states. It's huge. They said there's something running around there, and they don't know if it's him or not, a Sasquatch or whatever they want to call it, but it attacks people and it's actually killed people. This one supposedly have, and it's not nice. It's aggressive, and it comes after people. There's more than one too. And I've seen the movie a long time ago. Go check it out if you guys ever seen it. And, it's pretty good. They tried to make a second one, was all right. Kind of just, I didn't really care for it. But the first one was kind of cool. But yeah, I've watched a lot about this. Go look it up, guys. These supposed to attack people, and they're not nice, and they're deformed too. Some of them. They said this is just from the show I watched, so I can go take that a grain of salt. Monster Hunter will exaggerate stuff. It's a great show. I used to love watching it, but we know it's people, can say things and say that they saw this and saw that, and it gets exaggerated. But they really have people trying to hunt these things because they're nasty creatures. They supposedly kill people's livestock and attack them and kill their dogs and kill their animals and kill their sheep and pigs, and just do a lot of havoc, tear a lot of the cornfields up out there. I've heard a lot of stuff about these things, messing up people's lands, cars. They're nasty, and they're not like the other ones. They usually they only really do anything like those ones if you're really messing with them. Most of the time, they leave you alone. Now, the ones in Canada in that certain area, there's like this island, and they throw rocks and stuff because I think they're very smart, but I don't think they're trying to kill anybody. They're just trying to scare you away. These things and what I've been hearing in Texas are nasty, and they don't like you, and they want to kill you, or they'll chase you away, and they're just not nice. We'll just put it that way. It isn't like the abominable snowman, and they're just different. And I think maybe it has to do with that area. There's a lot of things swamping around in the swamp, a lot of nasty gas. There's gas in the swamp. People don't realize that. And I think it just the environment, maybe that just gone a little crazy because of stuff around there and stuff. Like I said, I don't know. Maybe it's just the area. I don't know. It's hot out there during the summertime. It's nasty, really humid. So you never know. They could have been a different breed, or maybe there's something mixed with something. I don't know. They're a crazy inbred. That could be a possibility. That's why they attack people. Maybe they're mixed with, I don't know, something else we don't know about yet. Or maybe they mixed with the human, and they got that side of the human, and it's just or maybe they hate us because, before, the settlers first came, maybe we killed some of them, and then they killed some of us back, and they just hated us since then. You never know. I'm just giving ideas, and, whatever you guys think, give us an answer what you think in the comments, guys, when you listen to the show. That's all I could say pretty much on this fact. Do I believe that it's probably possible? I believe they're not everything out there is nice and love us and want to give us a hug, and we go dancing in the forest with, like the Bay Road Beast. Everybody thinks that's a werewolf. I don't think this is a werewolf. I believe it's some kind of weird creature. Maybe it's a hybrid werewolf and big Sasquatch. Maybe they tried to make something. Maybe it inbred with something with that boggy creature. That thing was supposed to be like green, and it stinks like a skunk ape. Maybe it mixed with a skunk ape. You guys heard about that in Florida? Maybe it's an inbred between the two, and it just made this hybrid killer. Like the Nephilim. They attack people and eat people. Maybe it's a mixture between the Nephilim and Sasquatch, giant Pithecus. I can't say the word that good, but maybe it's a mixture, and that's why it just went crazy. Maybe it just where the area is, like James has said, just Texas is just crazy. Nothing against people in Texas. My family's from Texas. I've been to Texas numerous times. Texas is cool, but just different world, different place. Nothing wrong with that. Just like California, it's a different world, different place. So that's pretty much all I got to say. But I do believe they probably exist. I believe they're probably nasty. I've read, like I said, I've seen numerous stories about it, heard stories. I believe they are. I do believe these stories that he was talking about. And I just believe they just don't like people. I don't think they like anybody, it sounds like. They just chase you off or kill anything. Animals. I heard they kill what do they call those pigs out there? Because I know there's wild boar in Texas, and they're huge. So I think they kill them too. So, I just think they're nasty altogether. But yeah, I kind of believe this. So there you go, James.
What if the reason that the Texas Bigfoot are more aggressive and don't seem to have any kind of fear of humans anymore is because they realized they don't have to fear us. They can be aggressive and nothing happens. So there's no reason to really be afraid. That's kind of a terrifying thought when you really think about that. Because as time goes on, generation after generation after generation, mankind just gets softer. Because what happens is technology gets better. As technology gets better, more things are done by technology that used to have to be done manually. And mankind doesn't have to do as much stuff anymore. So we are free to sit around and play video games and watch movies and stuff like that. So what ends up happening is we get weaker and weaker as time goes on. Because we're not doing the things we used to do. We're not going out in the woods and cutting down trees and fighting for survival and trying to hunt for our food to make sure we eat. We just go down to McDonald's. So in the older times, right, let's go like back to Civil War times. In that period, you had mountain men going up through the wilderness everywhere, especially in that area. So these people were tough-ass people. You know, they lived in the mountains full time. They hunted, they trapped, they fished. They were wilderness people. And they would absolutely shoot your ass if you threatened them. So if a Bigfoot was to witness human beings at that time, they would understandably try to avoid them because they're dangerous. They might get shot. But as time goes on, they have seen us get weaker and weaker and weaker. And I think they kind of push the boundaries a little bit to see what they can get away with. We know from many, many different witness reports and from this article itself that Bigfoot will absolutely stake out your camp. They will hang out in the woods around your camp and watch you and see what you're doing and judge for themselves whether or not you're a threat. And if they think that you are and they want you out of their territory, they will chuck rocks at you and logs at you and make all kinds of noise and yell and stuff like that and scare the hell out of you. Now, we know that from the article, and we know that from many, many different witness reports as well. So it stands to reason that being true, they would have been witnessing generation after generation of human beings as they came in. So you would have generation after generation of Bigfoot witnessing generation after generation of man. Now, the Bigfoot has remained in the forest. So its life has not really changed. It's still doing everything it used to do. It's the same basic creature. We, on the other hand, have changed a great deal. When people come into the park now, they're not coming in there to hunt and trap as much and do that kind of thing. Most of the people that the Bigfoot will run into nowadays are just there camping. You know, they have a tent, they have a cooler with canned goods and stuff like that. They're not hunting and fishing so much. I mean, maybe a little bit of fishing, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. And they're soft people. You know, they're not tough people that the Bigfoot has to worry about. And believe me, you can tell when you're watching somebody. You can tell whether or not that person is going to be a threat or whether they're just a weak person that you can easily roll over. And I think Bigfoot would be able to tell that too. It doesn't take superhuman levels of deduction or deductive reasoning to figure out if somebody's weak or not. Any animal can look at somebody and tell if they're weak, and that's how predators operate. They go for the weak. So it stands to reason that if Bigfoot is watching, and we know he is, and he's sitting there judging whether or not somebody's weak, which we know that he could, then he would realize that there is no reason to fear mankind anymore. Because even if they make a lot of noise and mess around a bit, throw stuff, nothing's going to happen to them. That person's not going to run out in the woods and kill them. They're going to hide in their tent and scream like little girls. That's probably what's going to happen. So I think that might be a good explanation also for why the Texas Bigfoot are a lot more aggressive. And I think it's not any one of those theories. I think most likely it's a combination of those things and probably other things that I haven't thought of as well. that cause this particular Bigfoot in this area to be a lot more aggressive than other Bigfoot are. Now, I think that strategy will backfire eventually, because what's going to happen is they're going to try to scare people away like they're doing. And it's going to get reported on like it has been. And one thing about human beings is we all want to see what's going on. You know, we're curious. So people are going to read this, and they're going to listen to this show and other shows, and they're going to go and they're going to try to see this behavior for themselves and capture it on film or whatever. So when that happens, you're going to have more and more and more people going out there. So what the Bigfoot was trying to accomplish of scaring people away so that people don't come there anymore, he will actually have accomplished the exact opposite and bring more people in than he ever has. So most likely what will happen is somebody will end up getting either hurt very badly or killed by one of these things. And when that happens, there will be an uproar. And then the real badasses, the people in the military, SWAT team people, those kind of people, are going to go. And they're going to kill these things. I don't want to see any of that happen, but I have a feeling that it's going to go that way. To where if you have people that are going to that park that are getting attacked and hurt or killed, that's bad for business. You're not going to have people paying to come in your park if they're getting killed in there. And they're going to want to do something about that. And it's bad for the politicians. They're not going to want people getting killed there because that makes them look bad. They're not doing anything about it. So they will probably overreact and send in the military or SWAT or somebody will go in there that is a badass that could kill these things. And that's what's going to end up happening. There's good and bad to that scenario. Mostly bad. Nobody wants to see these things get hurt or killed that way. That's a horrible thing. But the good part about it would be at least then it would be proven that they're real because there would be a body. But that's really not the way that I want it to happen. I would much rather get really good film of it that could be backed up by respected scientists or something like that, where they would go out on an expedition and find one of these things and get really awesome footage that nobody could deny. Get samples of hair or something like that to where they could have intact DNA structure, that they could have real proof to show everybody, hey, these things exist. That's the way I would rather it happen. But who knows what's actually going to happen. I think anytime you have an animal that is aggressive, coming into contact with a lot of people, it's only a matter of time before people get killed. And we all know what happens when an animal kills a human being. Almost every time that animal is put down. And I don't think that this would be any different, unfortunately. I think no matter what, you are probably looking at a tragic situation that will be coming eventually from this. Now, the other option there is that the Sasquatch, instead of becoming more aggressive when more people show up, they become more reclusive and just kind of disappear back into the shadows and go back to avoiding human beings again. That's always a possibility. I don't think that's what would happen, but that's always a possibility. So those are the basic theories on what could be causing the Texas Bigfoot to be much more aggressive than any other kind. When we put this show on YouTube, go down in the comment section and let me know your theories, or if you agree with one of ours. Let me know what you think about it. I'd be really interested to hear that. It's kind of cool because there are so many different kinds of Bigfoot all around the world. In the Pacific Northwest, you have the normal Bigfoot, You know, the one that everybody knows about and what you think of when you hear Bigfoot. In Texas, you have a much more aggressive Bigfoot that is kind of really dangerous if you really think about it. In Florida, you have what they call the skunk ape, which is a smaller version of Bigfoot that has a very, very foul odor to it. And that's why they call it skunk ape, is because of the way it smells. Here in Virginia, you have kind of a hybrid kind of Bigfoot that's not quite as large as the one in Pacific Northwest, but it's rather chill. It doesn't really bother anybody, or it isn't really aggressive at all. It just kind of hangs out, and when you go after it, it runs away. I mean, that's what happened in my case, is I ran straight at it, and it just turned around and hauled ass. You know, and the reason I ran at it, if you haven't heard that original story, then I recommend you go back and you find the first Bigfoot episode we did, and you listen to that story, because it was a really good story. But I want to say, for those that don't know that story, the reason that I chased the Bigfoot, where I ran right at it, was not out of some sense of macho-ness, hey, I'm a badass and I'm going to go after Bigfoot. It wasn't anything like that. I was standing outside smoking a cigarette, because this was back when I smoked. And my wife was actually at work and was on her way home. And I didn't want her to get home because it was already dark. I didn't want her to get home, get out of the car, and that thing be right there and attack her or something like that. So what I was trying to do comes from years and years and years of experience in the mountains and the woods, to where if you have a bear or a bobcat or a mountain lion or something like that in your area there by your house, if you're really loud and you scream and holler and clap your hands and yell at it and run at it, they'll just take off, because they don't know what the hell's going on. It's kind of a sensory overload. You know, all they hear is super loud noises and see this big thing come running at them, and they just haul ass. And I'm 6'5", about 300 pounds. I'm a big dude. So when I come running at you, you got problems. So that was what was in my head, was I was just trying to protect my wife. I was running at this thing to try to scare it away. Now, had it not turned and ran, I don't know what I would have done. I mean, it's not like I was going to run up there, pick it up and give it a suplex, or come off the top rope and give it an elbow smash or something. I mean, the thing was like almost 12 foot tall. I'm not going to do that. It's going to kill me. But I ran at it to try to scare it, and it turned around and hauled ass, so I chased it to make sure it got out of the area. So that is the reasoning behind what I did. I wanted to make sure I cleared that up, because I know sometimes when I tell these stories, it sounds like some kind of false machismo, like I'm trying to say, oh, look at me, I'm the baddest dude on the planet, I chased a Sasquatch. No, it wasn't like that at all, man. I'd have pissed myself if that thing would have come at me. You know, it was a spooky kind of situation. But my wife is like the most important thing in the world to me. I love her to death. And I just couldn't imagine the thought of her getting out of that car when she got home from work and that thing being there and scaring her, or, God forbid, attacking her. So what I did was try to run it off so that wouldn't happen. That was why I did what I did. So I thought that was important to clear up. So I'm going to throw it back over to Old Boy now and see what else he has to say and get his final sum up. So Old Boy, go ahead, brother.
Thank you, brother. I kind of agree with that. I think it may be what he said. It might not just be scared of us anymore. I think that's pretty sums up everything. I don't think they're scared of us at all. They've probably seen us so many times now that they're used to us, and they realize they're bigger and badder than us. The problem is they're not bulletproof, and that's going to be the issue. The other problem is we're also in their land. Remember, we're in their land sometimes, and I think they're tired of it, and they're realizing we're not good either, because a lot of people who go hunting are not just hunting legally, they're poaching, and maybe they notice we're doing things we're not supposed to do, or they just don't want us there, and they realize they're bigger than us and they can kick our ass or kill us. And we either have people going in there in droves, or they get the military to kill them. and that would be a real shame. That's what I think would end up happening. The problem is the military going in covert ops, trying to kill these things. People would find it out. It would cause nothing but a bunch of drama. You would have the animal activists out there as quick as you could probably think. It would cause nothing, and then they would make a law where you couldn't hunt them anymore. And that's probably what happened anyway. So do realize these things have a right to live just like we do. And I think that's what a lot of people get misconstrued, is they have a right to live just like we do. They have a right to hunt. Sometimes they go on our property, get them out of there. That's the best thing, but you don't necessarily need to kill them. If you're going to be out there, take yourself a gun. Like James said, people are using hunting rifles, shotguns. So if you have that, some people do carry that, and I'm not suggesting you do, then I feel sorry for the Bigfoot, but that's my summary, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show again. Did we try to do something different this time? We haven't done Bigfoot for over a year or so or longer. So I'm glad we got to do this. We haven't really talked about crypto for a while. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show on Parax Radio. Sunday nights, 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern. Technically Monday morning. You guys want to listen to the show and all the other old shows, newer shows, go to James Hershey's YouTube page and subscribe. You guys want to get merchandise like shirts, COVID masks, Apple phone covers, go ahead and check it out, and he'll tell you where to go after I'm done rambling on. And you can get whatever you want, guys, pretty much. You can want something special made, we'll do it. You guys want to check us out on, I think we're also on Instagram. You guys can check us out, Tells the Abyss. You can check us out on Facebook and Instagram too, and Staring into the Abyss. Remember, I do have a new book out called God's Will with a question mark at the end. You can get it everywhere. Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, Walmart.com, Amazon, all bookstores. You can get the paperback and the ebook. I think that's what it's called. I hope everybody has a wonderful night and weekend. Misfits, sugar ladies, monster hunters, and demon lovers, I love you and blessed be. Have a good night.
The YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Hershey Jr. That's where pretty much everything is. That's where you can find every episode of Staring into the Abyss after they air on the radio. We put them on the YouTube channel. You can find every episode of Tales from the Abyss. That is the TV show that we do. You can also find every episode of Paranormal News, which is where I take articles and read them and then comment on them that are about the paranormal and stuff like that. It's basically the same thing I do on Staring, just a smaller version of it, so that the videos are anywhere from, like 10 minutes to 15 minutes long instead of an hour. The reason Staring's an hour is because it's a radio show, so we have to put it on the radio. It has to be a certain length. But anyway, every episode of Paranormal News is on there as well. There's tons of stuff there. There's hundreds and hundreds of videos, so please go to the channel, subscribe, and enjoy it. The merchandise store is teespring.com/stores/staring into the abyss. That's where all the merch is. There's t-shirts, there's hoodies, there's posters, pillows, blankets, coffee mugs, stickers, all kinds of stuff. There's multiple different designs. The quality is really good and the price is really low. We set it just over our cost. Just enough to ship it to you, really. So that you can get merch if that's what you want at a low price, and we don't go broke trying to give it to you. So if you're into merch, that's where you can find that. Thank you for listening to the show tonight. Thank you for hanging out with us, as always. And we will catch you in the next one. Until we speak to you again. Love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.